Well, it's great to meet you. I love your story. I'm looking forward to getting into it. So thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Listen, anytime I get to speak about recovery, I consider it a gift and a responsibility.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story. So let's dive in. I want to
Okay.
begin with this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing so much about our lives and our world. How did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you see the world and live today?
So that's how I came up with the title God Doesn't Relapse. When I had actually, right when COVID first started, I got sick. And um, it started very strange. It was not a respiratory problem. I lost functionality in my legs. And every day I woke up, it got worse to the point where I was in so much pain I wanted to die. And finally, we figured out that I had fibromyalgia, that the long COVID, a combination of long COVID and fibromyalgia, and I was told that I might end up in a wheelchair. And so the whole point of God doesn't relapse is that you could be coasting along at 16 years of sobriety and something cataclysmic can just knock you off the stool. And I was just chronically ill for 5 years. And so my my point is that, people rely on so many external solutions for their happiness or for their recovery. But what happens when you become chronically ill? Right? The world still continues without you. You have friends that will check in on you, but with people who say scuba diving's my higher power, nature's my higher power, right? There are multiple pathways to a relationship with a higher power. What happens when you're bedridden? You better believe in something
Yeah,
because faith is all you have left sometimes.
yeah. So let's get into what you're doing these days. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer them?
Sure. So I've been sober for 21 years and I wrote a book to reach a broader audience because I used to have a private consulting practice that counseled primarily high net worth families. And I wanted to reach a bigger audience because most people can't afford those services. And so my mission, one of the reasons why I believe I was spared, because so many of my friends are dead, is to help families not enable their kids. It's to help addicts who might struggle with the concept of God to make service their higher power. And then the whole conception of faith. Now, what I would say to a 12-year-old is, I don't tell kids what to do. I just say, this is what happened to me.
Yeah,
Because the minute you start trying to tell someone not to do something, they may have a problem with authority like I did.
yeah,
If you tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it.
yeah.
So my message to 12-year-olds is uh, fentanyl has changed the game. It has moved the goalpost. You are no longer in a position to go to a high school party or a college party and try something casually. Oh, it's just a line or a pill. You could drop dead immediately. You don't have that leeway that I did when I was using drugs
What is this? What is that about fentanyl now? That are people putting it in maliciously? Why is this becoming a
because it's
thing?
cheaper.
Oh, so it's just a cheaper mixture. So it's
hmm
not like it's some mad scientist is wanting to knock people off. It's just a cheaper.
Well, also, the first line in my book is the first person I use drugs with is dead. The last person I use drugs with is dead. So why am I still here? Now, the last person who I used with, he died from a fentanyl overdose. Actually, they found him laying in a pool of his own blood, and he actually liked to snort pure fentanyl. So there are people who just like to roll the dice and get that high.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's go back to when you were 12 and you were a kid. What did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream life?
Now you have to understand that in the beginning of my book, I was a juvenile delinquent. So by the time I was 6, the school therapist told my parents that she thought I would end up in prison.
Wow.
I did not have the conventional childhood. I was in serious trouble and I had serious behavioral issues. And I even knew at the age of 12 that um, I struggled in school. So, and I was intimidated by my father's success. So when you grow up in a community where everybody's successful, I just felt like I was hanging on by a thread because I was underachieving in school.
Yeah. So, what were the examples early on in your life that allowed you to find this sobriety, to find this strength, to get out of that window of dying and the window that your friends were in? What were there people were there what happened? How did you get here?
So I had 13 years of wrecked cars, wrecked relationships, lying, stealing, pawning, all the ugliness that comes with addiction. Now, you see, my father was my greatest enabler. And that's one of I'm trying to reach parents. My father was not my father. He was my best friend. And kids need fathers, they don't need best friends. And so one of the things I say is that parents are loving their kids to death, and the worst thing that you can do for your children is to destroy their ambition. And so when you spoil someone or you make life too easy for them, it's just going to hurt them in the long run. But finally, what happened to where I got sober was that my family came together, and I had a cousin that said, "No one in this family believes you, and no one in this family believes in you." That's a reckoning.
Wow.
And that was 2 weeks before I got sober. And then finally, I came home from a 3-day crack and alcohol binge, and my mom started sobbing when I walked inside. I weighed 129 pounds. Then she collected herself and she said, "If you're going to die, it's not going to be in this house. Get out. I'm changing the locks." And my father decided to cut me off. So I think a lot of parents they get held hostage by the addiction. And so kids will manipulate their trauma. Oh, I'll kill myself. Don't throw me out. I'm gonna, they scare parents to death that they're somehow, but parents have a right to live a nice life too,
Yeah.
right? And so my parents drew a line in the sand and they created boundaries, right? This is about creating healthy boundaries. That's why I'm alive.
So, who's been that consistent, inspirational, heroic force in your life that's allowed you to go through these peaks and valleys and to arrive where you're at today?
Well, God, number one,
Yeah.
because I got on my knees and begged for help. All the things I said I would never do are the things that saved my life. So humility is an essential part of getting sober. And so prayer and service has had the biggest impact, but I would say my mom, because my mom always tried to create boundaries and to hold the line, I should say. When I was 16, I came home intoxicated, spilled Kool-Aid on the white carpet, and she started crying, and I started laughing. I don't know why. I was, messed up. And she took everything I had and threw it in the middle of the street and
Wow.
said, "Get out of my house." Now, she let me back in eventually, but she really tried to, um, be a parent instead of my friend. And that's the concern today is too many parents want to be their kids' friends.
So, on your path of spirituality and faith, you know, there's these moments where undeniably you realize there's a God. There's
Mhm.
a spiritual entity out there. Did
Yes.
you have a moment like that? Did you have a breakthrough?
Several. Let me tell you one that ties into the book. And for all the naysayers out there, there's no way this was a coincidence. Now, I had not seen my fourth grade English teacher in 40 years. And the day that I started writing about her in my book, I ran into her.
Yeah.
I got goosebumps immediately. I felt the presence of the universe. And I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't see her for
crazy.
40 years and then I
Yeah.
write about her and I see her.
Are you
That
kidding?
you don't have to believe in a biblical God, but if you don't believe in something like that, then I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's not a coincidence. I walked up to her, tapped her on the shoulder. I said, "Mrs. Rothman," not her real name. I said, "You were my fourth grade English teacher." And she said, "Well, I taught a lot of kids. What school?" I said, "Matt Grace from Hillel Day School." And she stopped and then looked at me with a visceral reaction and said, "You're the worst kid I ever had.
Wow.
I hated teaching you. I hated teaching your class. And I went to the administration and they just dumped you in my lap." Now, a lot of people get really upset with her response. But what I say is that she was angry at the boy who I used to be, not at the man God had transformed.
Yeah.
So I didn't hold a resentment to her. I actually made restitution to her to validate how difficult I was as a student.
So, did you have a good talk? Was it a good visit?
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, it was uh I got to clean up my side of the street. That's all that matters,
Yeah.
right?
So, yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I remember when I was growing up, I was a punk. And I remember at one point in the eighth grade, there was a teacher. His name was Dave Rabori, and he was a Vietnam vet. He was kind of the tough guy. And he came up to me and he was like, Domino, he was like, you're going to do something someday. I can see it in your eyes. But you better stop hanging around these derelicts. He always called everybody a derelict. And he just believed in me. There was that moment. And the reason why I'm saying this is there's always those people early on in your life, whether you decide to do something about it, but they see something. Well, did you have that when you were growing up where there was somebody that was like, I see through all of the BS. I see
No,
you. No.
no, no, because I was in serious trouble. I started committing felonies. Even before I picked up drugs and alcohol, I just fell into. Now you have to understand that my parents got divorced, and I lived with my father, who was never around. So people would show up to my house during school hours to get high.
Gotcha.
So yeah, there really wasn't. I know that my parents loved me, right? But there was no one. I guess, my dad said that you could do anything, but when you're in trouble all the time, it's hard to see through that.
So, what was your dad like? What did he do for a living? What was his persona?
Uh, he owned TV and radio stations,
Okay.
and but then eventually he owned a post-production studio in Michigan, and so all the big three automakers, Chrysler, Ford, GM, they would take all of their the advertising agencies would edit all of the commercials at his editing bays.
Wow.
So there was a lot of advertisers coming through, and my dad, I think, wanted to impress upon his peers that he was successful. So he bought this house that was 7,400 square feet with a tennis court and a swimming pool and a basketball court. Um, it was one of the premier homes. And one of the things I say is that it was beautiful on the outside, but ugly on the inside
Yeah.
because nobody was happy.
Yeah.
So my dad he was the life of the party. Everybody wanted to be around him, but he just, um, what I say is that this book is not an indictment of his failures. It's a testimony to what happens when you love someone too much.
Yeah.
And so, I was left unattended.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, let me ask you this. When you look at the landscape of all of these different people that have overcome, that have, made their lives better, kicked addiction, we have all kinds of shows that have been out there. Who is it that inspired you? Was there anybody that went through that process that you've been through that you look up to that you've either met or would love to meet?
Yes. So I got sober going to a men's meeting. Now, there's just something very special about going to a meeting with men because there's no women. Women can be a distraction. You can't really share about certain things. And these, there's a saying, I walked down the stairs of one of the most beautiful pieces of property in Michigan to this meeting, and I wanted what these men had. They were laughing. They seemed comfortable in their own skin. They had re-entered society and found balance in their life between their personal life and recovery life. And you know what? I surrounded myself with people who told me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And they basically said, if you want this life, this is what we do. Not what we think you should do, but this is what we do. And if you want this, I'll help you. And if not, that's fine too. And I had a mentor in my life who really told me what I needed to hear, right? We've gotten way too sensitive today, right? Alcoholics are hypersensitive to begin with, but the minute you say something that someone doesn't like, you're not their friend anymore, right? Everybody wants to hear the truth until it's about them.
Yeah.
And so I found a man who cared more about my relationship with God and a program than my feelings. And I was in a place where I was able to hear that. And he drummed in me the power of service and how that can transform my life. And it did transform my life, and I've watched it transform other people's lives.
You know, on a personal note, I want to throw out something about recovery and addiction. Last summer, I tried in earnest to get Dwight Gooden into the Hall of Fame. He had one last chance, and do you know Doc Gooden's
Doc,
story?
of course, and strawberry.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so Daryl lives in Missouri. He's a part of a ministry, and he's 100% transformed, and so is Doc. And he came through Kansas City in 2023 and got inducted into the Hall of Game. He's got every possible shrine. He's got his number retired, but he's not in Cooperstown. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, not only is he a wonderful, kind, delightful human being, but I think we need to start putting people that have gone through the horrors and the hell of addiction, that have gotten over it. I think it's time for people to forgive and to move on. And I wanted Doc to be emblematic of that. Let's put him in Cooperstown. Sure, he had this past, but he was one of the finest, best pitchers ever in this game, and has numbers that are unmatched. Why can't we get to a point? And that's my point that I'm trying to bring up to you. Why can't we get to a point where if we're going to say we're going to forgive and move on, let's do it in earnest. Let's get him in Cooperstown. Let's go for it.
Here's the problem. Families don't want to acknowledge their loved one's addiction. That is the biggest, people don't know. It's not about the addict getting help. It's about the family not creating the same toxic behavior once they come from treatment. That is the biggest challenge that we have in this country. Uh, my dad, everybody came to my dad and said, "You're killing your son." And he said, "Ma, he's fine. He's fine." You know, my father had rose-colored glasses. He wanted to sweep it under the rug. In my book, I have interludes in between every chapter that are italicized. And there's a lot of case studies in there that demonstrate the success of families and how they recovered together. And there's one family that's the gold star. See, this man was a Harvard graduate, a Wharton graduate. Okay, only flies private, four homes, hundreds of six, $700 million. And when he sat down with me, he said, "Matt, I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do." He got his ego out of the way. He went to family therapy with his wife, and they learned how to communicate with their son. And that's the biggest problem, is that if families are ashamed of their loved ones, then Cooperstown isn't gonna, this is way deeper than that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it. I get it. I guess just on the surface, I would like to see if we're going to have this whole triumphant cancel culture thing where we delight in people getting ripped down. Why can't we take some level of that vitriol and delight and hold up the people that have gotten the strength and grit? Because this is not easy. And I've read enough books, I've seen enough of this. This is an absolutely unbelievable task to get to this point from where you're at to where you're at now.
Yeah, but you can do it though.
Right. I get it. I get
Yeah.
it. But it's not easy, and that's what I'm saying.
No, but life isn't easy.
I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah, I'm
But I
kind
just
of go ahead, sorry.
I just think that there should be a level of confetti that's thrown over those kinds of moments where people overcome, and we move on and we say, hey, you could come into this hall. We can celebrate you as a player.
Yeah, I don't know. Did he gamble?
No, it was
Yeah, then
just
he
drugs.
should be in.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it
Drugs should
was
not keep someone out of the Hall of Fame.
exactly. I mean,
Plus,
it
he
was
didn't use steroids either.
right. And it wasn't like he didn't show up for games. He did it after. It wasn't, I mean, he missed a parade, I think, after they won in 86, but I think overall it wasn't something where he did steroids or he did something that was enhancing like Bonds and all these other people did. That's the thing. I mean, I've analyzed it enough where I'm not going in willy-nilly, but I just think it's more of a metaphor for the community of people that overcome.
Yeah, yeah, there's still a stigma
Yeah.
attached to it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see no reason why he shouldn't be in the.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he should. So let me
Yeah.
ask you this.
Hmm.
If you had a dream tonight, you ran into that young version of you that was just on the edge, felonies, things were going south, and you walked in at your age and there was a film projector and you click play and your life, 60-second highlight reel came up. Would you believe that your life turned out this way?
No, no, it's a miracle that I'm alive. That's why the first line, I believe, listen, I had to put an addendum in the beginning of the book because it was tough to read because I was so cruel as a kid. So I don't want readers to quit on me. I tell them that I'm not someone who you would root for as a young man, but to stick with it because there is an incredible transformation. And out of all my friends, I was the least likable. And I'm still here. And I look at it that I have a responsibility, so they didn't die in vain,
Yeah.
right? I believe that I was spared, that I'm not here by accident, that God spared the least likable guy, and that I am, um, making up for my past.
What gives you the strength every day to wake up to change people's lives through your message in your book, staying sober and having all of this energy? What is that for you every day?
Prayer, service, and perspective. So you have to understand that coming from a place of privilege, privileged people have lost a tremendous amount of perspective of what's going on in the world. And when you grow up in a bubble, right? Like I grew up in a suburb of Detroit. I'm sure you're familiar with the movie 8 Mile
Yeah.
with Eminem, right? So 8 Mile Road is basically when you cross from all white to all black. And when you grow up in a bubble filled with privilege, you don't know what real life in my like listen, trauma, you can be rich and have trauma and you can have problems, and I'm not trying to minimize the problems, but the stories that I hear on the other side of 8 Mile, where I have gone to volunteer, it gives me fresh perspective of how truly blessed that I am. And I think that if more people would just volunteer and do service, see what it does is addiction is an obsession with self, right? Oh, you don't know my problems. If you had it as bad as me, you would drink like me. You don't understand how bad my life is. And no, 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 you don't understand how life you're good, how life, how good your life is, right? And that comes from being in a place of humility that when I started volunteering, I saw, listen, I grew up on third base. I mean, sometimes I just pinch myself and it's like, what did I do to deserve this life?
Yeah.
Right? And I want to demonstrate to the world that listen, I think that if everybody volunteered, the world would be a better place.
Yeah. I agree. S-
Uh,
No, go ahead.
Real quickly, one of the things I've noticed is that I think charities need checks, but men need mentors. And there's something more powerful than driving to work one-on-one with a young man who has nothing. That's way more powerful than writing a check. There's a mentorship that's happening.
So let me ask you this. You've clearly dedicated your life to getting the message out through your book and otherwise. What's been one of the best responses you've gotten? Fan letters, somebody that's been really moved by your message.
Oh, I believe it or not, um I had someone message me and said, "Matt, this is so and so. I don't know if you remember me, but the first time I drank was at a party at your house, and I drank alcoholically for 15 years every day since then." And she said, "I just want to let you know that I love your material, and it's helped me. I have a brother that's in active addiction, and your videos have helped me, create boundaries." Imagine, and I've had multiple people come up to me and say, "Yeah, I was at your house. I got in trouble at your house."
What a wonderful karmic cleanse to have that and to run into the teacher, all these little examples to kind of tie up some of those, perceptions of who you were growing up and how you've changed now. I mean, that has to feel kind of like a phoenix rising.
Yeah, it's just I believe God speaks through other people. I firmly, but because of just of experiences that I have. Um, Even I'm going to take this one step further because this is so 2 weeks after I wrote about my teacher, I wrote about an employer that I had that my dad got me the job at this business, and I was showing up to work every day intoxicated in the morning, and at lunch break I would go drink a half pint of vodka, sometimes a pint, and then swallow Vicodin and Adderall. And I would come back to my desk. Sometimes I would vomit in a cubicle because I couldn't make it to the bathroom. And one day I started snapping my fingers in my boss's face, and he wanted to fire me, but my dad protected me. Anyway, long story short, I started writing about that experience, had not seen him in 25 years, and I ran into him too.
That's amazing.
I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I get it. I mean, that's
there's something out
undeniable.
there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. There certainly
Yeah,
is.
I'm not. I respect Christians. I respect Catholics big time because I get on my knees every day to pray at home. So it's not a religious thing. It's an act of surrender. But I think that for the atheists who say that there's nothing out there, I've had way too many experiences. I talk about that in my book. I mean, running into my teacher and then the boss, and it's just,
I've seen viral clips of people that are men's as smart, like an IQ that's unbelievable, and they always ask, is there a God? Do you believe there's a God? And they just have this explanation, and it's always yes. And it comes from a very grounded, very realistic standpoint because there's things that can be mystical about the process. But these examples, I mean, even if you dig into the science of ESP, our spinal column has enough electricity that can fuel a lightning bolt. But when those situations come up, I mean, I've heard Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of, you know, flick away if you're in Sweden on a vacation or run into a kid from your third grade class. It's not so coincidental. But for me, for what you're saying, you're the example, you're the dictionary example of how the hell could that happen otherwise? There's no way.
actually, it's funny. I heard someone mention that because I love him. I love watching his stuff.
Yeah,
He doesn't think that there's a God. Someone said that in a meeting I was in that he doesn't believe in so and so, and I said, yeah, but he wasn't smoking crack every day either,
right.
right? Like he
Yeah,
didn't go through what we went through.
yeah, for sure. So after this whole journey of finding yourself, finding a redemption, helping people, and coming from hell and back again, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that gets your book, everyone in different circles, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm someone who tells the truth,
Yeah,
and I think that's gotten lost. I think that I'm someone who will. Um, I think there's a healthy way to be confrontational. One of my character defects, though, is that sometimes I can be too stiff, too judgmental, too harsh, and that's something that I need to work on and that I've tried to work on. But I'd rather everybody who knows me, they know where they stand.
yeah,
If I don't like you, I don't like you, and you'll know it.
for sure.
And if I love you, I will fight to the end of the earth for you. So I am extremely loyal and extremely brutally honest. And I'm more comfortable that way. If someone doesn't want to be my friend because I tell them that, hey, this is what I see. When someone critiques me, I might be pissed in the beginning, but I really try to listen to what someone has to say and then maybe, work on it with a therapist or just try to pray on it. So I would say that I'm the exact opposite of who I used to be, which was a liar and a manipulator.
What I've learned being on this planet for over 50 years is that I listen more and talk less. You know what I'm saying? Because there's something about the power of taking it in, no matter how brutal it can be. If you let that incubate for a little while, it can be the wisdom you're looking for,
Absolutely.
you know. So
Yeah.
if anybody wants to get the book, they want to reach out, any of the good business in your world, where do they go?
MattGrace.com.
Okay.
And so there's Books a Million, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon. And I'm doing something called the National Sobriety Tour, where I'm speaking to nonprofit organizations, churches, synagogues at no cost. So if someone wants to fill out some information and they want me to come speak, I'm doing that until the book launch. My book launch is August 11th. So
Okay.
I'm speaking for free until that day.
Wonderful. What are you going to do on the day that it's launched? You got plans?
Not yet. I got to figure that out.
That's cool. I always like to ask that, like with jazz, like with musicians. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna, I mean, are you gonna skydive with the copy in your hand? Like, what are you gonna do? I always love the celebration stories because it's a big deal, man. I mean, that's a lot of time. I mean, your story is obviously different because it's excruciating and you had to
Yeah.
relive all of that. But when you feel that in your hands in that journey, because you got the editing and the publisher, the row. Like when you get to that point, you hold it in your hands. That's the magic.
Yeah, I have to figure that out.
Yeah,
I'm just I've been so slammed with social media content and I just made a TikTok video that has now gone viral. I posted it Saturday
yeah.
and it's at 210,000 views now with like 25,000 likes. And the clip was My father introduced me to prostitution and gambling.
Yeah.
And what's surprising is that there's a lot of responses where guys are like, "Your dad's a legend. Your
Oh
dad's
no.
cool as hell," and he was a legend. But what I'm trying to say is like, if you're gonna go to a casino and a strip club, why don't you experience that with your buddy instead of your
Right.
father?
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
Like my father normalized prostitutes for me.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Well, the message is getting out there. Matt, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your strength, your courage. Thank you for your story, and best of luck with the release of the book.
thank you so much.
I appreciate it.